Custom cleats. Custom cleats have always been the NFL's favorite target because they blend individuality with visibility, and that combination never sits well with the league's strict image control. Players love showing personality through art, colors, and themes, but the NFL only cares about uniformity. That's why DeAndre Hopkins got blasted for wearing Yeezy-styled cleats, even though fans love them, and why every season brings new finds for shoes that are just a little too creative. The irony is that sneaker culture exploded across every major sport, yet football stayed locked in the past. Some players say custom cleats help tell their story, but the NFL only sees them as a threat to sponsorship deals. That tension fuels constant drama, especially when stars push boundaries to keep their swag alive. And what comes next takes that tension to a whole new level because the next accessory became even more controversial: tinted visors. Tinted visors became one of the most infamous bans because they blended intimidation with mystery, and the league wanted neither. In the 1990s, tinted colored visors took off fast, transforming defensive players into robotic, unreadable forces. But trainers hated being unable to check a player's eyes during concussion tests. That safety concern became the NFL's official justification, yet many players still believe the rule is more about keeping everyone visually identical. Even today, you'll see stars wear tinted visors during warm-ups only to switch to clear before kickoff. Some players try to gain medical exemptions for light sensitivity, and a few succeed, but the majority are denied. Fans always ask why college players can wear them freely while the NFL clamps down, which only fuels more frustration. But that's not all, because the crackdown on visors didn't stop at tint alone. Non-matching cleats. Non-matching cleats are where the NFL's enforcement gets downright theatrical, because even the slightest mismatch triggers a reaction. Odell Beckham Jr. learned this the hard way, when he wore white Joker-themed cleats with a full brown uniform and thought nobody would care. For an entire half, the league said nothing. Then suddenly, officials stormed in and forced him to change mid-game or be removed from the field. Fans were stunned that mismatched colors carried the same urgency as an on-field penalty, but the league was determined to assert control. Players quietly admitted they felt singled out, especially when last-minute uniform changes made pre-approved cleats suddenly illegal. The randomness only made the rule feel more personal and unpredictable. And the strangest part is that cleats were only the beginning of the NFL's obsession with eliminating visual expression. Graphic visors. Graphic visors exploded in the early 2000s. Flames, flags, and designs that instantly stood out, but the NFL wasted no time shutting them down. Officials claimed these patterns interfered with visibility and created unsafe distraction, but players insisted the visors worked fine and simply gave them flair. The league wasn't interested in flair. They wanted everything clean and logo approved, and custom visor graphics didn't fit that vision. Within a few seasons, the ban was absolute, and any shield that wasn't clear or medically tinted became grounds for a fine. Fans still see graphic visors in college or warm-ups and assume they're allowed, only to learn that they're banned once the actual game starts. It was one of the fastest bans the NFL ever pushed through, and it sent a clear message that individuality would always take a back seat. And the next ban made that message even louder. Supreme arm sleeve. When Odell Beckham Jr. wore a red Supreme arm sleeve during warm-ups, he probably knew it would go viral, but he also knew the league would respond instantly. Even though the sleeve matched team colors, the bright Supreme logo violated every rule about unapproved branding. The NFL treats sideline gear like a runaway for sponsors, and anything outside its approved partners becomes a threat to multi-million-dollar deals. The moment images hit social media, officials contacted the Giants and made it clear that Odell could not wear the sleeve during the game or he'd be fined. Fans saw it as harmless style, but the NFL saw it as a breach in their branding armor. Players have tried covering logos or modifying sleeves, but spotters catch everything. And the league's obsession with eliminating non-partner brands didn't stop with sleeves, because their next ban went even further. Hard jewelry. Hard jewelry has always been banned on the field. But Odell Beckham Jr. took the controversy to new heights when he wore a luxury watch during a game. The piece immediately captured national attention, and the league quickly reminded everyone that any hard object creates safety risks for both the wearer and opponents. Chains can snap, rings can cut skin, and watches can shatter on contact. Players argued they had worn jewelry for years without issue, but the NFL insisted the risk wasn't worth it. The watch incident made headlines because it blended style with defiance, and fans couldn't believe a player would wear something worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in a collision-heavy sport. Yet Odell insisted others would have done the same if their watch was not that valuable. And just when the jewelry debate seemed like it couldn't escalate, the next controversy proved otherwise: Apple Watches. Ben Roethlisberger probably didn't expect to cause uproar when he wore an Apple Watch on the sideline while injured, but the NFL considered it a major violation. Technology that can send or receive messages is strictly forbidden because it opens the door to potential competitive advantages. The league worried about silent communication, unauthorized updates, or real-time strategy adjustments that could slip through unnoticed. Even though Roethlisberger wasn't in uniform and wasn't calling plays, the rules still applied. Players, coaches, and staff cannot carry any device capable of messaging during games. The fine surprised fans because it showed how tightly the NFL monitors even harmless-looking accessories. The league doesn't just want uniformity. They want absolute control over every tool available near the field. And if you think banning watches sounds extreme, the next accessory pushed the league into even more dramatic territory: overbuilt face masks. Overbuilt face masks became iconic in the early 2010s when players like Justin Tuck and Chris Canty started wearing intimidating cage-like designs that practically turned helmets into armor. Fans loved the look, and players said the added bars protected them from hits to the face. But equipment experts warned these masks were too heavy and could strain neck muscles. The NFL eventually banned all non-standard face masks, calling them unsafe and structurally unreliable. Some players were furious, insisting the masks helped them feel protected in the trenches, but the league wasn't backing down. Only players with medical exemptions could keep using them, and even those were phased out over time. The rule became a turning point in the NFL's ongoing push for both safety and visual uniformity. But you won't believe how far the league went in the next category: banned helmets. Helmet bans brought the NFL's strictness to a whole new level because they targeted equipment players had worn their entire careers. In 2018, the league introduced a list of helmets that failed updated safety tests, and dozens of players were forced to switch. Even legends like Tom Brady resisted the change, arguing the new models restricted vision and didn't feel right. But the NFL insisted the data was clear. Any helmet older than 10 years also became automatically illegal, which wiped out many players' favorites overnight. Teams scrambled to adjust, and equipment managers spent weeks refitting helmets to meet the new guidelines. This sudden shift created frustration across the league. But first, only cool people are subscribed to this channel, so hit that subscribe button before we go any further. Custom helmet shells. Custom helmet shells were the next casualty of the NFL's image crackdown, because they crossed the league's strict line between individuality and branding control. For years, players experimented with glossy chrome finishes, alternate shell colors, or subtle artistic touches that made their helmet stand out. The NFL shut all of it down instantly. Team helmets must follow approved colors, decals, and finishes, and no player is allowed to deviate from that formula. Even throwback uniforms were restricted for years because teams were only allowed to use a single shell color all season. Any attempt at personalization was treated like a threat to safety certification and a challenge to uniformity. Players argued that custom shells didn't affect performance, yet the league refused to budge. Helmet individuality vanished entirely, and that strictness set the tone for how the NFL handled every accessory going forward. But that's not all, because the next ban got even more heated: oversized casts. Oversized cast clubs were once a badge of toughness, turning injured defenders into one-armed wrecking balls who could still disrupt plays with raw impact. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, players wrapped broken hands in layers of hard padding, creating massive clubs that looked like blunt weapons. Fans loved the spectacle, but the NFL eventually cracked down, arguing the size and hardness posed danger to opponents. Casts now must be fully padded, soft, and sized only to protect the injury instead of creating a competitive advantage. Some players felt targeted, especially those who relied on the club to still contribute on the field. But the league didn't care about aesthetics or sentiment. Safety and uniformity took priority, and the era of oversized clubs vanished. And once you see the next rule the NFL pushed, it becomes clear the crackdown wasn't slowing down: eye black messages. Eye black messages became one of the most surprising bans because they started as harmless tributes. Players used them to honor relatives, share motivational words, or show support for meaningful causes. But as messages grew more personal, the NFL worried about controversial or political phrases appearing on national broadcasts. In 2010, they banned all writing on eye black, requiring it to remain plain. Players like D'Angelo Williams, who honored his family's battle with cancer, were stunned when they received fines for messages that fans viewed as positive and respectful. The league argued it needed a clean, uniform look across every face on screen. Many players felt it was an attack on expression, and fans couldn't believe something so small could cause fines. The ban stuck, and it set the stage for an even more controversial accessory battle that was about to unfold. Message headbands. Message headbands became a lightning rod when Saints linebacker Demario Davis wore one that said "Man of God" underneath his helmet. Even though it matched team colors and wasn't visible during gameplay, the NFL fined him because personal messages of any kind violated the uniform code. The fine shocked fans because it seemed excessive and targeted, especially when the message wasn't offensive. Davis later admitted he didn't even know the rule existed, which made the situation feel even more unfair. After public backlash, he pledged to donate money to charity and turn the incident into something positive. The league refused to change the rule. No messages, no slogans, and no personal statements are allowed on any visible or invisible accessory. The rigid stance made players realize even the smallest item could lead to an unexpected fine. And up next is one of the strictest bans the league still enforces: unapproved logos. Unapproved logos have been the NFL's longest running obsession because sponsorship deals drive so much of the league's business. Any logo not tied to the NFL's official partners is considered an immediate violation. This includes wrist tape designs, undershirt branding, non-partner gloves, and any visible marking the league didn't authorize. Players with personal endorsement deals have tried sneaking logos onto their gear, only to be quickly hit with fines when spotters caught them. The NFL keeps its broadcast tightly controlled, and even a small logo can disrupt the money behind those partnerships. Odell Beckham Jr.'s fashion choices often turned into instant controversies because his accessories were scrutinized down to the millimeter. The crackdown created a tense atmosphere where even harmless items became risky, and if players thought socks would be safe from the NFL's reach, they were very wrong. Custom socks. Custom socks might sound harmless, but in the NFL, they represent another layer of strict uniform control. The league insists socks must cover the leg from shoe to pant with no visible gaps, no bare skin, and no personal designs. Marshawn Lynch was fined repeatedly for wearing mismatched or non-team colors, even when the socks were part of his signature look. Some players tried rolling their socks low to create a unique style, but the league quickly warned them or issued fines. Officials claim the rule ensures consistency, but players see it as nitpicking that strips personality from the uniform. Fans rarely notice sock violations, which makes the fines feel even more excessive. Yet the NFL treats this rule as seriously as any equipment standard. And while socks might be strict, the next accessory takes uniform enforcement to a whole different level: untucked jerseys. Untucked jerseys became a surprising point of emphasis when the NFL cracked down in 2006, insisting players keep the uniforms neat at all times. Receivers and defensive backs often preferred the untucked look because it added a street-style flair and gave them more comfort, but the league saw it as sloppy presentation. Officials could send players to the sideline mid-game to tuck in their jerseys, and repeat offenders were fined later in the week. Players argued that gameplay naturally pulled jerseys loose, but the NFL insisted on constant compliance. The rule became symbolic of the league's desire to control even the smallest visual element on the field. It also reminded players that nothing was too minor to escape enforcement, and if untucked jerseys seemed strict, the next rule affected almost every position on every play. Missing pads. Missing pads became one of the NFL's most heavily enforced rules starting in 2013, when the league mandated knee pads and thigh pads for all players. For years, wide receivers and defensive backs played without them to feel faster and lighter, but the NFL argued that lower body injuries were becoming too common. The new rule required uniform inspections, and players not wearing the right pads could be pulled from the game until they complied. Many athletes complained that pads restricted movement or disrupted their sleek aesthetic, but the league didn't budge. Safety became the official priority, even as players insisted fashion and comfort mattered too. The crackdown changed the look of the sport almost overnight, and even though the rules settled in overtime, the final banned accessory represented one of the most dramatic shifts in NFL swagger: bandanas. Bandanas once defined sideline swagger thanks to players like Deion Sanders, who turned them into cultural staples during the 1990s. Fans loved this style, and players embraced the look as part of their identity. But in 2001, the NFL voted overwhelmingly to ban bandanas in all 9 team-issued headgear, calling it a uniformity issue. The decision felt like the league was targeting individuality rather than safety. Players were told to wear only team-colored skull caps with league logos, removing any chance for personal flair. The rules remained in place for decades with almost no exceptions, and the bandana style that once defined an era disappeared completely. It was one of the clearest examples of the NFL choosing total presentation control over player expression. If you like this video, consider watching this next one, which YouTube thinks you're going to really love.